Hey, Bhakti Vinoda Swaya, Shila Bhakti Vinoda Swaya. Hey, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hey, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Whoop. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Nitai Gaur Hari Bham, Hari Bham, Hari Bham, Hari Bham. Yasamati Nandana Braja Bharana Gura Gokula Ranjana. Hey! I'm not coming. His mother calls him for lunch. I'm not coming. Kana, lunch is ready. Not me. I'm playing. Krishna doesn't want to eat, he wants to play. Okay, so that's a beautiful, that song or that bhajan is actually one of the favorite bhajans of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj. Before he departed the planet, he asked for 2 bhajans to be sung. One was Jasomati Nandana and the other one's Shri Rupa Manjari Pada. And he said that bhajan is the highest of all expressions of bhakti, glorifying Srila Rupa Goswami. Okay, so the book is over there and I'm over here. Okay. I'm here, you don't have to welcome. It's okay. You get only 3 words. Just 3 words.
Hare Krishna.
3 words. Maharaj is here. That's all.
Maharaj is here, and
That's
it's a
it.
great fortune to have him here after the lockdown. Maharaj is actually the liberator of the lockdowns because the main preaching field of Maharaj is the jail. As such, material world is the jail, so that way everything is in jail. But within this jail, there are many jails within the Western world and Eastern world. And Maharaj's specialization is preaching to the jail inmates and enthusing them to come out of the jail. So Maharaj has written a book also called The Holy Jail.
2 books.
2 books, apart from that part. The Holy Jail, which is a compilation of how the prison ministry works and what is the experience of the people who became devotees within the jail. So it's a very, very special field. And we have been having Association Maharaj before lockdown once a year, but last 3 years we could not have him here.
I was locked down. I was in jail.
So Maharaj is here to unlock us. Maharaj was born in New Jersey in 1947, so he's just 76-year-old. Yeah, 76 years young. 75 year young. Young Maharaj, not old. You saw in enthusiasm.
Don't give me any extra credit.
And in 1971, he came across the devotees. In 1973, he got initiated by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And after some time, he has been serving in the New Vrindavan. And New Vrindavan, we all know it's a historical chapter in our ISKCON's history, and the hostel is there. And in 1986, Maharaj accepted the sannyas initiation, and then he has been traveling and preaching. Especially, he has been based in Chicago, and he has been expanding the prison ministry preaching from there. Apart from that, Maharaj also travels and preaches in other parts of America as well as India. India has been to many parts actually. Maharaj makes a whole tour of Maharashtra when he comes here. And also in the Western Europe, Croatia, Slovenia, Italy. So it's our great fortune that Maharaj is here for almost a week. And we can just see what kind of great enthusiasm Maharaj has. He can just, we are fortunate we have the big pillars like this in the temple, all otherwise we don't know what would have happened. So let us very warmly welcome Maharaj to Shri Shri Radha Vrindavan Chandra Mandir by once loudly chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. His Holiness Chandramauli Swami Maharaj ki, Prabhupada ki.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 2, Ajamil, delivered by the Vishnu Dudus, text 43. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hitvat Kalevaram Tirte Gangayam Darsanaranu Sadhya Sarupam Jagre Bhagavat Parswa Vartinam Hitvat Kalevaram Tirte Gangayam Darsanaranu Sadhya Sarupam Jagre Bhagavat Parswa Vartinam Hitvat Kalavaram Tirte Gangayam Darsanaranu Sadhya Sarupam Jagre Bhagavat Parswa Vartinam. Ladies, any? Anyone else? Hitva, giving up, Kalevaram, the material body, Tirte, in the holy place, Gangayam, on the bank of the Ganga, Darshanat Anu, after seeing, Sadhya, immediately, Swarupam, his original spiritual form, Jagre, he assumed, Bhagavaparsva Avartinam, which is fit for an associate of the Lord. Translation. Upon seeing the Vishnu Dutas, Ajamil gave up his material body at Hardwar on the bank of the Ganges. He regained his original spiritual body, which was a body appropriate for an associate of the Lord. Very short purport. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 4:9, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvataha takva deham punam janma naitimam eti sorjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains to my eternal abode, O Arjuna. The results of perfection in Krishna consciousness is that after giving up one's material body, one is immediately transferred to the spiritual world in one's original spiritual body, to become an associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Some devotees go to Vaikuntha Loka, and others go to Goloka Vrindavan to become associates of Krishna. Om Gyantimidandasya Gyanajana Salakaya Chaksun Militam Nena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Bhakti Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Pastyatya Desatarine Vanchakalpa Tarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Pevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we hear how Ajamil, in his very desperate moment, called out without any offense the holy name of Sri Lord Narayan. He called in what is known as namabhas, or calling with not knowing it was the Supreme Lord's name he was calling. He was simply calling his son. But the power of Narayan's name manifested because when he heard his own name, when he heard the name of Narayan being called, he remembered Lord Narayan. And just by doing that, all the reactions of all of his sinful activities, not only for that birth that he was in, but for all his previous sinful activities, were completely destroyed. He became liberated, but he didn't attain the stage of pure bhakti. So therefore, as this verse said, he had to give up his material body at Hardwar on the banks of the Ganges. So then he was carried to Hardwar, and he spent 12 years in Hardwar doing bhakti, and he reached pure devotional service, and then he was qualified to go back home, back to God. It's amazing when you see how merciful the Lord's name is. Simply calling once, and it wasn't even the name of Krishna, because it is explained that the name of Krishna even has more of these spiritual potencies as the name of Narayan, or at least it manifests more of the spiritual potencies. So even by chanting the name of Vaikuntha, he actually became fully purified of all sinful reactions, unknowingly. And then he had to live for 12 more years, but his life was simply pure devotional service. And Prabhupada wants to make a point here that the goal of life is not to stay in this material world and try to make some nice arrangement here. Because there's no such thing as a nice arrangement. Whatever arrangement we make in this material world is finished, either immediately or in time. Or even if you make some nice arrangement, you can't even enjoy it. Just like there was one man in America. He was quite wealthy. I knew his persons who worked for him. They were devotees. And he had this huge, gigantic land where he had horses and various types of animals there. Beautiful lake, all kinds of nice greenery. It was many, many, many hectares of land. But he never came there because he was always working in his office, making more money. He'd come there once or twice a year to see how things were going on with his workers. So what's the use? He had this big estate, and he's toiling very hard in the office every day so he can get some more money, so he can think how rich he is, so when he dies, he can die very rich. It's better to die rich than to die poor, right? No, it's all the same, because when you die, you die. It's just, it doesn't matter what is your material status when you die. So it was interesting, the people who were working on his land and keeping the land, they were enjoying the land. He even gave them a house to live in. One was my disciple and her husband, they were living there. And they were taking care of the land, and they lived freely, and they enjoyed the land which was his, and he was in the office, calculating how much more money he needs in order to reach a certain number, I think. You see how the materialists, they can't even enjoy what they somehow accumulate. And even if they try to enjoy it, they have no time. There's one statement in the Shastras. I built a house so I could be happy, and the house burned down. I built a house so I could be happy, and then the house burned down. So this is material life. Whatever you establish in this world, the time factor, sometimes it's quick and sometimes it's not, but it always works in the same way, is that it takes away everything. And we're left with nothing. But here, if we use our time to become fully Krishna conscious, what does that mean? Then, manaso deho geho, yogichu more arpilun tu alpade nanda kishore. Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he gives the formula. He says, my home, my wife, my family, my possessions, my very body, it's yours, Nanda. Nanda Kishore, he calls Krishna Nanda Kishore. He wants to give everything to Krishna and dedicate everything for the service of Krishna. Therefore, although he has many things, he understands it belongs to Krishna. Nothing in this world belongs to us, not even the body we have. Sometimes we say, my body. But you didn't produce it. Your parents gave it to you, and they got their body from their parents, and you just go back and back and back. And then even if you find somebody who owns the body, then the ingredients that make up the body was not made by the person who owns it. The ingredients are actually coming from higher sources, and that Krishna says, Bhumir kamana buddhi evacha hankati iti ame bena prakriti astada. He names the 8 elements which make up all of material existence, and he says that actually all of this is my energy. So everything belongs to Krishna. Everything. Prabhupada used to say, to help us, Prabhupada would say, my money is my money, and your money is my money. which means everything belongs to Krishna, and the spiritual master is the caretaker of everything. So he takes it, he uses it for Krishna. Therefore, everything belongs to Krishna. And we can use it, and we can also get something to live comfortably and nicely in this world, at least for some small period of time. But everyone should know that there is no future in trying to make a nice arrangement in this material world, because in due course of time, just like Prabhupada talks about Lomasa Muni, one sadhu, he was a very hairy sadhu, and he had a benediction that for every hair on his head, he would leave one life of Brahma. And so he was doing his bhajan on the banks of the holy rivers, and then he had a few followers. And so his followers were thinking, Guru Maharaj doesn't even have a cottage. We should, arrange for him to get a place. So they came and asked him, Guru Maharaj, we could see you're living in the open, and we want you to have a nice place, so give us permission, we'll build you a nice cottage. He said, why waste time? Don't bother, I'm not going to be here that long. So in relationship to eternal time, even the long durations of life at Lord Brahma, from the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, all are places of misery. Why? Because birth and death is an incumbent and innate quality that cannot be destroyed simply by material arrangements. It can only be destroyed by actually freeing oneself from the entanglement of material life. So Prabhupada quotes a very important verse in this verse, Janma karma chame divyam mevam yo veti takwataha taktva purnam janmani naiti mameti sorjana. This verse is when the devotees were asking Srila Prabhupada, what is the most important verse in the Bhagavad Gita? Prabhupada named this verse. That's recorded. Why? Because if you know, as it says here, one who knows my transcendental nature and my appearance in activities in this world, you're immediately, upon the leaving of this body, you're transported back to the spiritual world, automatic. So what is that knowledge? What does it mean to know Krishna's transcendental activities and transcendental appearance in this world? That means to absorb oneself in hearing the glories of the Lord. Because simply by hearing the glories of the Lord, we awaken that knowledge, because both the sound vibration and the purification of the heart come by hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord automatically. Sometimes devotees asked, just like someone asked me yesterday, what's the essence of Krishna consciousness? Where should you focus to get the maximum amount of benefit? And it becomes easy. It's just Shravanam, Kirtanam, Krishna, Smaranam. That's the essence. To hear, to chant, and to remember the glories of the Lord. And make that a principle of our entire day. Satam prasangam mama virya sambido bhavanti ritkarna rasayana kata. This verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, describes that those persons who hear and chant the glories of the Lord, they derive great satisfaction and happiness, so much so that they are on their way back to Godhead automatically. So Krishna's activities, or Ram's activities, Gaura-Nitai's activities, Jagannath's activities, even the activities of the Vaikuntha manifestations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, can purify the heart completely and elevate one to pure conscious, pure devotional service. Because when that becomes a continuous activity of the devotee, then gradually material world is gone. There's no more material world. You might say, well, we have so many other things to do. We got to maintain our family. We got to go to school and get some good marks in school so we can get a job and so we can make money and then die like everybody else. But all of these extra things that come by way of living in the material world can also be purified. When you understand that the process is that to use everything in the service of the Lord. And Krishna explains that in that all activities should be done for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And those activities that are not done, Bhagavatam, Sutta Goswami says, Shrama eva kevalam, a useless waste of time. Because as we mentioned, everything you establish in this material world is under the influence of the time factor. And we are not under the influence of the time factor. When Sukadeva Goswami was talking to Maharaj Parikshit, explaining him the final stages of Srimad Bhagavatam just before he departed the world, Sukadeva Goswami diverted for a while and started to talk about the difference between the body and the soul. And he said, Maharaj, you know, you're about to leave this world. You're going to die very soon. But don't worry about it, because you're not this body. This body is simply an external manifestation of the material energy given to you. And in one point, it'll be gone. So you are pure soul. You are part and parcel of Krishna. Your actual identity is completely different from everything material, both immediate and extended. And sometimes we like to find some kind of material identity, even within the realm of material. Just like Prabhupada, not Prabhupada, actually one very senior Prabhupada disciple was preaching to one couple in South America. And he was trying to explain to them the difference between the body and the soul. And he said to them, well, you're a soul. In other words, you're a spiritual being. And the woman, she was there, was a couple. She said, yes, I know I'm a soul, but I'm a female soul. And my husband, he's a male soul, you know. So this bodily attachment and identification goes really deep. That we can't even seem to get over this idea. And the whole material energy is reinforcing our material attachments and material identities. So that's why we need to hear and chant the glories of the Lord and associate with the devotees as much as possible. And as we traverse through the different stages of bhakti and come to the stage of attachment for Krishna, then our devotional service becomes, what we say, ecstatic, becomes very, very wonderful. Become attached to Krishna. Become attached to hearing about Krishna, become attached to serving Krishna, become attached to associating with those devotees who are also hearing and serving the Lord. And according to one's, and that's what the meaning of this verse is, one who knows the transcendental nature of my activities and appearance. And that's not doesn't mean, well, if somebody says to you, what is Krishna's activities in Vrindavan, and you tell him one pastime. That doesn't mean you know. That means you can remember something you heard and you're repeating it, and that's nice. But knowing it means knowing it within the heart. Knowing it completely as a realization and not such as some theoretical idea. And that comes by absorption in hearing and chanting, because that material energy will pull your consciousness in. And then after some time, just like when Sri Narada Muni he had reached perfection just as before he actually became Sri Narada Muni. The Lord was in his heart, and he was meditating on the Lord in the heart, and then the Lord manifested himself externally and appeared before Narada Muni in his transcendental form. He was a Vaikuntha, he was the four-armed Vishnu. And Narada Muni, in that, of course, he hadn't reached Narada Muni yet. This was his previous life. He experienced that there was no difference between him and the Lord. It's not that he thought he was the Lord, or the Lord and him were non-different. It meant that there was no difference in desire. The Lord was trying to bring him back, and he wanted to come back. So if we have that desire, I simply want to go back to Godhead. I want to simply, again, associate with Krishna in loving devotional service. We are doing that now. We're practicing it when we can actually come to the point of realizing it. The more we practice, the more we realize it. Srila Prabhupada would say, devotional service, simply practice. That's all. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes, because Jiva Surupai Krishna Nityadas. And that all living entities are by nature part and parcel of Krishna. But the process is to hear. Because all of the activities of devotional service center around the process of hearing. Sometimes devotees say, well, I have too many services to do. I don't have enough time for chanting. I don't have time for hearing. But you have to make time. Services are important, but that hearing and chanting is what really goes to and gives us the transcendental happiness. And it says, what is that verse? Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Sastri Hoy, Lavamata Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhi Hoy. One moment's association with a pure devotee of the Lord, by hearing from that pure devotee, you can reach complete purification of heart. In other words, there's no more material desires, no more material attachments. So Prabhupada was speaking, and he was quoting this verse. And the devotees said to Srila Prabhupada, yeah, we're hearing from you every day, but we're not purified. Something's wrong with the verse. We've had so many lavamatas. Lavamata means 1/11 of a second. And so, but Prabhupada gave the clarification. He said, when the wood is wet, it doesn't ignite, doesn't make a fire. Only when the wood dries out, then the fire begins. What does that mean? That we have to continually hear until we reach that stage of actually hearing. What does that mean? When you hear and you get realizations on what you hear. Someone tells you, you read in the books, I am not this body, I'm a spirit soul. And then you can accept that, you understand that, you believe that. But when you read it, or when you hear it, and you actually come to the point of understanding you're not that body, you can actually realize you're not that body. It's a difference between, just like when we sit down to eat. Sometimes we go to these different, shops or restaurants, and they give you a menu. And you read the menu, and you're reading all of the nice food on the menu. You're thinking, oh, wow, this is so nice. And you just finish the menu, and you put the menu down, and you say, well, that was a great meal. You didn't get anything out of it. So that's theoretical understanding of spiritual knowledge. When you actually taste the sweetness of the offering, then you get the experience and you get the benefit. You get nourishment, you get happiness, you get freedom from material attachments. So that's that's verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam explains that just like eating brings happiness, satisfaction of hunger, and what's the third one? And cessation of hunger, right? Yeah, all three cap. So automatically one gets realization of that knowledge, one gets detachment from everything material, and one gets promotion to the spiritual platform. So that is the power of hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. So it cannot be emphasized enough. So Srimad Bhagavatam is the essence of all spiritual scriptures. It is the sunam bonum. Actually, I was just reading yesterday in the Bhagavatam in the 12th canto how even the culmination of all of the Vedas cannot come to the standard of the importance of Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is Krishna himself in transcendental sound. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati describes the different cantos in Bhagavatam as analogous to the different parts of the Lord's transcendental body. First and second canto is his 2 feet, the third and fourth canto is thighs, and the middle of the body, and then gone all the way up to the smiling face of Krishna is the 10th canto. The 11th canto is his transcendental forehead, and the top of the head is the 12th canto. So each of these, and so it's non-different. The Srimad Bhagavatam is non-different. It says in the very beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam that when Krishna disappeared from the planet, everyone was feeling a great unhappiness. I mean, was great unhappiness. But then it was understood and explained that the Lord left himself in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. So by hearing more the pastimes of the Lord, absorbing ourselves as much as we can purify ourselves from all material, and we can actually experience real transcendental happiness, because the Lord's pastimes, activities, his qualities, his forms are unlimited as he is. Sukadeva Goswami is narrating to Maharaj Pariksit. Maharaj Pariksit is hearing for 7 days. After 6 days, Sukadeva Goswami kind of slowed down on the narration and said to Maharaj Pariksit, are you feeling hungry? Are you feeling a little tired? Do you want some water? And Sukadeva, Maharaj Pariksit even became even more enthusiastic. He said, now you're about to begin Krishna in Vrindavan, so please continue. Yeah, he wanted to hear Krishna's pastime. He didn't even think of his bodily needs at all. That's an example of how even one becomes so absorbed in one's in the activities, one forgets about eating, one forgets about sleeping. People in the material world even do that too. They get so absorbed in their material activities and they have so much attachment for it. They skip eating. Sometimes they don't even sleep properly. There was one story. It's kind of not a very nice story, but it's a true story, where 2 boys were living in the same dormitory in one college room in some university, Western country. And so one of the boys went out and he left for a few days. And the other boy was there, so he got on the computer. And he stayed on the computer for 3 days straight. He didn't eat and he didn't sleep. He was on the computer for 3 solid days, 24/7. At the end of when he got to the 3rd day, he collapsed. And then they found him, they saved his life. He got so absorbed in the computer that he didn't even consider his bodily necessities. So we can do that too with Krishna, but we won't collapse. You'll find yourself going up. You'll be just moving higher up in the, So yeah, and Krishna's more powerful than any, computer. So by hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, one can absorb himself in Krishna himself. And then the more you know Krishna, the more you hear about Krishna, the more you actually are eager to get back to Krishna. And it says here that one who reaches perfection in this life is transferred immediately. Then this is an interesting, sometimes people say, well, after you die, how long does it take before you reach your next destination? And that's a good question, because it's mentioned in different proportions depending on the nature of your life. If you're very sinful, then you go to Yamaraj, and then he punishes you for your sinful activity, and it takes you a while, actually months, to get a new body. The less sinful you are, the faster you get a body. And if you are a devotee in pure devotional service, it says just like the flash of the thunderbolt, the lightning, just that flash that you leave this body and immediately you're back in the spiritual world with Krishna. There's not even a calculated number of time. It's that fast. Your disappearance and your reappearance in the spiritual world is instantaneously. Now so the devotee doesn't have to worry. Krishna takes care of that personally. So here we see how Ajamil, he got special mercy by chanting the holy names of Lord Narayan, finished his life, and then went back home, back to Godhead. Despite all of his sinful activities, I mean, his sinful life was so grievous. It wasn't just an ordinary sinful life where he was, just wasting time, He was simply committing very heinous crimes, such as kidnapping people and getting money for them, like robbing, stealing, doing all kinds of nefarious acts. He didn't kill anybody, but he was committing many, many horrible crimes. But all of that was wiped away simply by his namabas chanting of the Lord's name. So, of course, you can't plan that. Some people think, well, yeah, I'll just be like Ajamil my whole life, and I'll do all kinds of sinful activities, and then when it's time to go, I'll say, Narayana, he's not there. Can't do that. If you plan it, it doesn't work, because Krishna knows, oh, you're going to try and cheat. Huh? It's like going to college and you don't go to your classes, you don't study the lessons, you don't do the homework, and you show up for the examination. What do you expect? You're not going to pass. So, therefore, so we should understand that by hearing and chanting, and you can see how powerful, but we can use the word powerful, but how merciful the Lord is. Just how merciful. He's eager to give us, a chance to go back home, back to Godhead in so many easy ways. But it all centers around hearing and chanting His glories. And the more we do that, the more we will become purified and actually attain transcendental happiness and full spiritual knowledge. Okay, so we'll stop here. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments? We have one here. Let's see.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. You're mentioning this point about wet grass and dry grass, but sometimes we...
Oh yeah, wet wood and dry wood.
Yeah. Sometimes we see in the example of Shastra, there's individuals, even a Jamil, and then also I'm thinking Mrigari the hunter, where even though the wood is wet, it kind of it acts immediately. So what in those circumstances, what's the...
Well, it was that in the case of a Jamil, and Prabhupada makes this point, and the Acharyas also make the point, that when he called out for his son, Narayan, soon as he heard his name, the name of Narayan being chanted by himself, he remembered the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in that stage of, we might say, chanting that was free from any offense, you see, but he didn't go back home to God. He actually got liberation, but he had to finish up and actually achieve, pure devotional service. So he had to spend another 12 years. Mrigari the hunter? We don't know. Is there a destination that was given by Mrigari?
There's no destination that's given, but it's clear that his character became completely reformed on...
Well, it's Sadhu Sangha, by the association of Sri Narada Muni and Parvat Muni, both. So that's also a very quick way to also, by these serving and associating with very pure devotees, one can make fast progress back home, back to Godhead. That association is purifying. So, as long as we are associating in the right mood, that's the important thing. Mrigari, he had to give up everything he understood to be his correct. And only when he did that was he able to receive the mercy of Narada Muni. He was trained by his parents, by his father, and he had the culture of that from generations. To kill animals half, and that's all he knew. And he had no other livelihood than that. So he had complete faith and obedience to Narada's instruction. He gave up that whole idea, and he stopped, not only that, he stopped killing altogether. Not only. So that faith in the pure devotee and the obedience of following the instructions is very powerful. It's purifying. Yes, okay. Question back all the way towards the middle there. A microphone's coming.
Maharaj, in the purport, Prabhupada says few devotees will go to Vaikuntha and few will go to Golok to become associated with Krishna. So who will go Vaikuntha and who will go to Golok?
Where do you want to go?
Golok.
You want to go to Goloka, all right. Put in your request. And then you follow in the footsteps of an eternal associate of Krishna and Vrindavan, and work under the guidance of an eternal associate, and follow the process, and then you qualify yourself to go back to Goloka. So you have to qualify yourself by engaging in the service of an associate of Sri Vrindavan Dham. So that's one of the features of what is called Raganuga Bhakti, because you can't give back to Godhead by Vaidhi Bhakti. Vaidhi Bhakti means following rules and regulations. Raganuga Bhakti means spontaneous attraction and loving service to the Lord, which goes through different stages. And one of the principles of that is one has to connect oneself with an eternal associate of the Lord, serve that associate, glorify that associate. And by the mercy of that associate, they'll take you to a higher stage of understanding of who you are in the spiritual world. That's a process. But if you don't follow that process, then whatever your consciousness is at the time of death, then yam yam vapi smaram bhavam, then you'll go wherever like that. So to go to Goloka Vrindavan means to worship the Lord in that mood of Vrindavan, and not simply worship the Lord in rules and regulations, which is Vaikuntha. You can get to Vaikuntha by rules and regulations, but not in Goloka Vrindavan. You have to come to spontaneous loving service in a mood of a resident of Vrindavan. That's a process. And that's explained by the acharyas, but especially Raghunath Das Goswamis and Rupa Goswami, also Sanatana Goswami. But Prabhupada includes it in his lectures and in his writings also.
Thank you, Maharaj. Can I ask one more question, Maharaj?
Yeah. Now where do you want to go? You still want to go to Goloka?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Follow that process. There's a nice book put out by Shiva Maharaj called Spontaneous Devotional Service. I think you should read that book because it gives the whole blueprint by how you can position yourself in the execution of devotional service.
Yes, Maharaj. My second question is about this Ajamil pastime. So Ajamil, when he was committing sinful activities, he must have committed so many offenses to many other living entities. So they were, but Lord saved him just by chanting one name. So those who were kind of got problems because of Ajamil, is it not an injustice with them by Lord not giving any punishment to Ajamil? And
no, that's a special mercy of the Lord. But he acted in the proper way. He chanted Namabhas, he chanted without attachments, he chanted free from any desires to... We're chanting the holy names of the Lord, but we still have We're still trying to fulfill our material desires while we're doing it. That's our problem. Now, Jamya had been completely aloof from all of that. He saw the Yamadutas coming, the agents of death. And so he was looking for some shelter. So he called his son, Narayan. But when he heard his name, as I mentioned it, and he heard the name of Narayan, he remembered the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan. At that time, all of the sinful activities were wiped away immediately. It says, once chanting the holy name of the Lord, free from all impurities, this is called namabhas, or even sudanam, then at that point you're liberated. You're already liberated. But then what you do the next minute, and you go back to being unliberated again. So we try and we endeavor to chant the holy names without offense. If you work in that way, then ultimately. So there was nothing unfair. The mercy of the Lord is never unfair. It's available for each and every one. One has to qualify himself to receive that mercy.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Yes, a question over here.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Maharaj. I really like that point, how you shared the importance of developing absorption and how we can do that with that good example. And
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
I like that point which you shared about developing absorption.
Right.
Need of it, very important. Then that effect will be there. Love matra sadhu sang.
Yeah.
One small question I want to ask Maharaj. This is a little out of curiosity, based on the previous question.
It's a little slower. If you talk a little slower, I can catch
Yes,
it.
Maharaj. So I just wanted to ask, we hear that when devotees go to Vaikuntha Loka, so the Vaikuntha airplane came and Vishnu Dutas come. Vishnu Dutas come to take. So when devotees are going to Golok, how do they go? Because Vishnu Dutas are not there in Golok Vrindavan.
Radhe Shyam, he's worried about who's going to take him back home. He's going back home, but he's not sure who's going to carry him. Yeah. So you just put in your request and see what happens. But don't worry, you'll get there. You just follow the process, that's all. But I mentioned that it's instantaneous for those who develop pure devotion. And as soon as they leave the body, they're immediately, that's mentioned in the 4th canto, instantaneously back home, back to Godhead. Yeah. Then you have the example of Juva Maharaj. When Juva Maharaj, the Vaikuntha airplane came for him. So that was explained, and of course, he offered that the airplane also come for his mother. So there seems to be this, there's some time period that's going on that. But everything is up to the Lord. Just purify yourself, and then the Lord will do the rest. Don't worry.
Devrat Prabhu asked about comparing Mrugari, and so when I think about Dundukari in the Bhagavatam Mahatmya, so it appears that he's just in 7 days done, no 12 years.
But he was absorbed.
Yes, Maharaj. So what is more powerful actually? Because Dundukari heard Bhagavatam and he just went back to, and he was more sinful actually appears to be than Ajamil also, because the prostitutes killed him.
You're looking for some benefits, huh? You want the shortcut route, huh?
What is more powerful?
Just follow the process. Don't worry about it. The rest is up to the Lord. Don't take birth as a ghost and try to imitate him. You think, well, I can follow in the steps of Dundavi, you know. All of these situations are coming up by natural arrangements. And therefore, the mercy of the Lord is being given according to their consciousness. That's all. Ajimil, Dundabi, and all, that's their situation. And the Lord is showing them mercy about how much they are absorbed in remembering Him with devotion. As soon as you remember, or even if you chant once the name of Krishna purely, you're qualified to go back home, back to Godhead. But you may want to stay here because Radhishan needs you to do some more service. So he won't let you go right away. But a devotee doesn't even want to go back home, back to Godhead. The devotee wants to serve the mission of the Lord by preaching Krishna consciousness. That's what the devotee is more interested in preaching to the conditioned souls than going back home, back to Godhead. Because then Krishna is even more favorably inclined. Then you're guaranteed to go back to Godhead if you give your life to spreading Krishna consciousness. Because you're making other souls, fortunate. And that's what Lord Chaitanya and all of the acharyas come to do the same thing. So if you're doing the work of the acharyas and the Lord, how much mercy are you going to receive? And Prabhupada also says that anyone who preaches Krishna consciousness, they're immediately recognized by the Lord. Immediately. And he says they're guaranteed to go back to Godhead. Even if they fall down during that, Krishna will pick them back up, and again, they will achieve perfection at the time of death.
Maharaj, thank you, Maharaj. Very beautiful class. Especially one of your points hit me very hard. I have seen this even before, but when I heard you, it made a lot of sense to me. That one fellow had a farm where he had a retreat center, and there were cows giving pure milk and fresh greenery and everything, beautiful big bungalows and everything. But the servants and servant maids had a very nice life there.
Yeah.
But he was living in the city and paying for it.
Yeah.
Working hard to count the money, how will I maintain it. That really was a very striking example. Although I have seen it, I never thought it in that way until I heard from you today.
That's a real live example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was very nice, Maharaj.
Yeah.
So, which goes to show that modern man is greedy for accumulating wealth, but he has no time to enjoy the wealth he earns.
Yeah, that's true with most people. They work hard all day and they come home at night and they just fall asleep. Can't even enjoy the house. So you have to take a vacation on the weekend, and then you spend all the time preparing for the vacation. And the time you're done preparing, the vacation is over. And then it rains, So, in a material world, you can't win. You can't win, no matter how hard you try.
Maharaj, His Grace Samarpan Prabhu, he is very fond of reading and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and also teaching it also. He is the one.
Yeah.
So, he often has one question going on for last many years to many preachers. His question is, which is most powerful process in devotional service? Whether is it hearing Srimad Bhagavatam or chanting the holy name or rendering service? Because he says that, Parishit Maharaj heard 7 days and he went back to Godhead. Dundukari heard for 7 days and he went back to Godhead. Whereas Ajamila, he chanted holy name, but then he took 12 years to go back to Godhead.
Did you read the poster? Prabhupada's poster over there. Prabhupada says distributing books are more important than kirtan.
Yeah. So Sarvam Prabhu, you directly ask, take this.
It's right there.
Yes, Maharaj. 15 days by mercy of Radheshambhu, I go to Sankirtan bus party to distribute.
Only 15 days, that's all.
Remaining 15 days, I want to hear from you.
There's 365 days in a year, only 15 days. What happens to the other 350?
15 days in a month.
Oh, in a month. That's, well, you'll get halfway to Vaikuntha then.
Maharaj, I am just following instruction.
Don't blame him, it's your fault. He's trying to blame the authorities here. No, it's up to you, it's between you and Krishna. If you're sincerely chanting, if you're sincerely worshiping, you're sincerely serving, that sincerity is the perfection of the activity. Sincerely means you want to please spiritual master, you want to please the Lord. So all apps, and Prabhupada would always say, all activities in devotional service are absolute. But then, at times he would also say that, but those who preach get special mercy. And those who distribute books, just like one girl asked Srila Prabhupada, and she was a book distributor. She said, Srila Prabhupada, we're out there distributing your books. What happens if we die during this distribution and we can't remember Krishna? Prabhupada said, don't worry, Lord Chaitanya will force himself into your consciousness. So that was Prabhupada was saying, this is how sacred it is to distribute the mercy of the Lord. Especially in Kali Yuga, this age is so bad. It's getting worse too, getting worse. So people are suffering like crazy. I mean, the suffering is becoming more and more apparent. And as Kali Yuga goes on, it gets even worse. Of course, Lord Chaitanya's golden age is coming, but still, Kali is very active in bringing the conditioned souls down to more and more hellish existence. So anyone who is preaching in this age is doing a great service. So preaching means, well, of course we mentioned distributing books, but giving lectures. But even if you're reaching out to people and bringing them in, say you invite someone to come to a temple, and they come to a temple and they get some mercy, that's preaching. So I'm just using that example that anyone who brings others into Krishna consciousness, in whatever way you do it, then that is very valuable, especially in this age. People are lost, really lost. Even those who practice some form of spiritual life or religious life, they don't understand the goal nor the process. They think it's to improve their material situation. That's the main reason why people come to spiritual life or religious life, is to make a better material arrangement, to stop suffering. I preach in London, so I was in London, and one lady, she came in front of the deities, and she was from the Indian culture, and she was praying very strongly, my son, he's going to school and he has 10 subjects. Please, Lord, give him 10 A's. So at the end of the semester, the boy got 9 A's, not 10. So she went back and said, my dear Lord, I asked for 10. You only gave 9. So that's how people see the Lord, as some kind of, check in. Let's see, what do I need? Some health, some health. Solve this problem for me, Lord. Solve this problem for me. The Prabhupada said, just become Krishna conscious, you solve all your problems. That's all. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My question is this pastime of Ajamila. This is more of a negative example or positive example?
It is more of a
negative example or positive example for devotees?
Negative or positive? Very
that's
positive. A very positive example. It shows the glories of the the holy name, and the compassion the Lord invests in His holy name. It's very positive. Yeah. In fact, Bhagavatam is glorified for this particular pastime. Sometimes they refer to Bhagavatam as the story of Ajamil. Very positive.
So it means after having the association of that means prostitute, the activities in which he indulged in, means those were not the, means it sounded more like that it is setting a negative example that what devotee should not engage into.
Well, obviously you don't do that. But because of his life went in that direction, but somehow he received the mercy of the Lord. And there is some side stories. The side story is one sadhu came to the home of Ajamil. This is a story I heard a few times. And Ajamil wasn't home. His wife was there, and she was pregnant with that son. And he said, I have a message for you. I think you should name that son Narayan. So she was told, and then when her husband come home, she told him. So it seems like the Lord kind of arranged somehow for him to give that name. And then ultimately. So that was due to Agyata Sukriti, what he had performed in his early life. He was very pious, very religious, very saintly Brahmana. But he fell down. So the Lord didn't forget about his early life and how much he was devoted. So that was to his credit, which brought him to the point of actually calling out the name of Narayan. So yeah, you want to avoid sinful activity, obviously. But if something leads you to perfection, then whatever leads you to perfection is actually in one sense the mercy of the Lord. Even if it looks something different. And you don't look convinced at all.
I'm convinced now.
You're convinced?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, it was a very positive pastime, believe me.
Yes, Maharaj, I'm convinced
Even
now.
if you don't believe me, you can ask others.
No,
Don't say.
I'm convinced. I'm convinced now.
Very positive. But we can't follow that pattern of life and expect to get the same mercy. It just doesn't work like that.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah. We have a question somewhere? Oh, okay. Okay. Who has the question? Raise your hand. Okay. They changed their mind.
Maharaj, I want to ask.
You have a question. Okay, you don't look like a Mataji.
Radhesham Prabhu asked that someone have question in Mata's side, so you can carry the mic.
You can ask for them. Okay.
Maharaj, thank you very much for a beautiful class. When we remember about Srila Prabhupada and his disciple, they undergo a lot of austerities, lot of tapasya, especially we heard from Radhana Swami Maharaj about you and Radhana Swami Maharaj austerity in Vrindavan. So my question is that when you are undergoing such austerities, such tapasya, so what should be our mood to accept the tapasya? Because currently in my personal life, when that sense is coming about the tapasya and austerity, little bit we off for the comfort zone.
We accept the austerities given in the Shastras as foundations for performing devotional service. But if we want to do something even more on top of that, then we should also make sure that it's not something that is useless or unnecessary. And therefore, one should get advice from senior devotees or from one's guru about taking on extra austerity that is not what we say authorized austerity. Like if you want to, like on Ekadasi, so we know Ekadasi means chanting. So you can chant more and more in Ekadasi. That's an austerity, but it's a recommended austerity. Now, if you want to say, well, you want to go preach in Beijing, China. You think, well, I'm going to, purify the communists. You should get some, permission before you do that one. Authorization, sanction, blessings. It's not like you can automatically. So taking on certain austerities can cause you can cause you to go down. So you should have to be clear on what is your austerity and what is the intention. Austerity is meant to increase our bhakti, that's all. Because austerity leads to bhakti. Knowledge leads to austerity, austerity leads to bhakti. But the whole process of Krishna consciousness centers around various types of austerities. But if you want to do something on top of what is authorized or given in the Shastras, or recommended by the temple authorities and the spiritual master, then you should get clarification and permission for. So you don't make a mistake and go down. So clarify your intentions. Like some, Ekadasi is meant for full fast. Every Ekadasi is supposed to be nirjal. Every Ekadasi is actually nirjal. Every Ekadasi is nirjal. But Srila Prabhupada didn't give us that because he knew it would be too difficult for us, and it wasn't necessary either. So he gave us a type of Ekadasi that is easily executable, but at the same time it's still an austerity. So if you want to do something greater than that, then you might want to clarify that. To get permission, get sanction. See if it's actually beneficial. Because it says an intelligent person will see the results before the activity. Sometimes we want to perform the activity, but we're not seeing the results ahead of time. Or we're not even thinking about the results. We're more enthusiastic about performing the activity. But there's a lot of activity that looks like austerity that may also bring you down in Krishna consciousness. It can make you hard-hearted, or it can actually be completely useless. It could take away from your devotional service. So what I would say is, get the blessings of the senior devotees before you go. Unless it's already given by Guru and Shastra, then you're fine. Okay, anything else? We have one. Well, this is a very good question paid group here. The last place I went, nobody asked any questions. This is good. Yes. Microphone. Okay.
Maharaj, thank you very much for a nice class today. You spoke about pure devotional hearing and chanting. And if we are not able to do that, at least engage your body, mind and words in service of Lord, body, mind and family, service of Lord. So Maharaj, at the end, you said that the sinful activities Ajamil did that got counteracted because of chanting one holy name. Actually, I was thinking that because I am not emotionally connected to the victims of previous victims of Ajamil, like that question Prabhuji was also asking. So I was not emotionally connected. So therefore, it is very easy to appreciate Ajamil's purification. But I was thinking, if we transport the Ajamil story and superimpose on 21st century in this age of internet, where already his wife and mother have already written blogs on Ajamil, how he has, done it, and we have read it. We know the victim, we know the Ajamil also, and now he is getting purified. When we hear that, so and we tell that, hey, come on, Ajamil is purifying because he is chanting and all. Then people won't appreciate. Instead of it is very difficult to appreciate because of the atmosphere created because of the emotional connect. So with this background where there is a confusion created in Kali Yuga because of such information.
I don't think so. And those who understand the mercy of the Lord and the situation will very much appreciate it, whether you're from the 21st century or the 10th century or the 26th century. Appreciation is done by understanding what is actually happening. It's not that the external environment should influence one's appreciation or not, or the time period. Those who are Krishna conscious will appreciate it. Those who are not Krishna conscious, they may have a hard time appreciating it or can't understand it. That's why we give explanations, to help them appreciate more. That's the purpose of discussing these things. Okay.
Means those who do that in terms of, when something happens and somebody appeals that, okay, please, because he's getting purified or something, then people ask that, now write an apology letter, something. So devotees write actually, you might have understood on the
write an apology letter.
So yeah, for telling if we say apichet sudurachar or anything like that, we get to ask, they ask, okay, or write an apology letter or something like that. And so with this in background, I just wanted to ask, like Maharaj, that...
You mean Jamil didn't go back home because he didn't write an apology letter?
No, not about him.
Forgot.
Those who support him,
Those who support
him, people misunderstand that, he's asking, we are the person who is asking, who is supporting Ajamil, the other people misunderstand that we are asking for, mercy, reduce its punishment or something like that. So therefore, they don't appreciate.
Mercy is given by the mercy giver. You can't, if someone wants to show mercy, they can show mercy. If someone doesn't want to show mercy, you can't say that, well, they failed to show mercy. It's up to the mercy giver to show mercy. You can't say, well, you're a wealthy person, therefore you have to give money. He'll give money if he wants to. So the same, the person who is carrying the mercy, it's up to that person. That's why it's called mercy. It's based on their decision to give or not give. That's why you can't compare all of these different situations and expect to get the same understanding from people. You have to see each situation as it is.
So, Maharaj, with this background, I just wanted to ask a question on compassion.
Okay. You asked. Very good. Thank you. Radhi Sham, you want to comment on this? Because this is beyond, I'm not sure I can handle this. He doesn't seem to be satisfied at all.
No, I didn't complete my question, Maharaj.
You didn't complete your question? Radhi Sham can answer the question. Because you have to listen to his answer, because you're working here. Okay.
Actually, Maharaj, as he says, there are two phases of life of a devotee. One aggressive phase and a purified phase.
Aggressive and purified.
Purified. So in the aggressive phase, one has plenty of conditionings due to which one has misbehaved with relatives, friends and Vaishnavas. And in a purified phase, a person reflects back and repents and is remorseful and is very sorry. In ISKCON, as he says, many people who have acted inappropriately, have repented by writing letters to those whom they hurt, like a wife or children or parents. And that. So now some people say that your one letter doesn't make any difference to us, what you did to us. And there are people who are their animosity.
They're revengeful.
Revengeful, yeah. So they want to see them punished even after the person has sought forgiveness. But from Krishna's point of view, apiche tudaracharo bhajate mamanani bhat. Krishna says, because he has already started chanting the holy name, he's cleansing his heart, he's rightly situated. Krishna sees him like the way you said, how Krishna sees him.
Yeah. There's a really, really nice discussion that's given by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur between Krishna and Arjuna. You've seen that discussion? And Arjuna is saying, well, he's so sinful, he committed so, and Krishna's pretty much, dismissing all of Arjuna's statements. And said, because he's engaged in my pure devotional service, he's saintly. I'm going to take him back to Godhead. And you look at it from the point of view of practicality. Is somebody makes a mistake but realizes the mistake, does the proper retribution with the persons involved, and then changes their life and becomes again properly situated. Why are we picking on that little thing or that thing that they did in the past? That's just, I think it's small-mindedness, to use a word. Because I think the people who want to make that an issue and keep that as the label of that person, they have problems themselves. And they're just reflecting their own problems onto someone else. That's the way I see it. You could cut that out of the tape if you want, but I'll get smashed for this class anyway. Everybody's listening. They'll say, "Oh, Maharaj, you don't know anything." I'll get 700 letters. Yeah. But if you understand how things work according to acharyas, the scriptures, and Krishna, and you see the situation for what it is. How many of us have made mistakes in the past? Do we want to be held responsible for our mistakes even though we're not doing it anymore? What we did before we became a devotee, some of us, we won't even talk about that. But, Prabhupada was very, he saw, all right, don't do it anymore, get back into Krishna consciousness, and then you're rightly situated. And then there should be a time period where, again, they have to show themselves that they are actually seriously, again, absorbed in devotional service. It's not like it happens immediately, obviously. But when you fall down, that means you're always falling, right? Is that what it means? No. Look. We have the example of Jagai and Madai. Lord Chaitanya wanted to kill them, of course, but because of what they did to Lord Nityananda. But then Lord Nityananda pleaded on their behalf. And then Lord Chaitanya actually understood and then because they sincerely repented, both of them, and they actually came to the point of, they were just like crying for what they had done. And they were really sincerely sorry. Lord Chaitanya told his disciples, he said, if you should not see them the way they were before, you should see them now as what they are now. Lord Chaitanya said that. So what did they do compared to what we did? Jagai and Madai committed sinful activities that were, he said, even Yamaraj couldn't keep up with it. And some of them are even described in other statements by acharyas, how heinous their crimes were. I mean, they killed people. So, yeah, but because they received the full mercy of the Lord, and they were fully repentant of what they did, and of course, in their heart, they were still feeling bad about what they had done in the past, but the Lord said you shouldn't see them according to what they were. You should see them to what they are now. He said that to his disciples, his followers. He was strong about that. He didn't make that statement kind of loosely. He was very strong about that. Yeah. But as I would, again, just to enunciate, each situation has to be seen as it is. You can't just lump everything up into one apichet sutsaracharo verse. You have to see everything, and then according to the situation.
For instance, if somebody has abused children or abused women, and later on they're repenting, the repenting devotee, in ISKCON, the leaders treat it in 3 ways. We call it the reprimand or suspend or remove.
All right.
From the position. After that is done,
that's their punishment.
A punishment. After that, they are offered an opportunity to associate with Vaishnavas, be in the community of Vaishnavas. At the same time, they are not given any position where they can get a chance to again abuse because of the revisiting of the old conditionings.
Yeah. I'm not going to comment on that because the CPO will be after me. So yeah, I don't want to get into managing because I don't want to manage the situations in our society right now. Yeah, so let's leave it at whatever's understanding. But yeah, everyone has a right to perform devotional service because that is the constitutional nature of every living entity, even if they're... And the examples are numerous, both in the Shastras and in practical everyday today life. So, but again, I just would say each situation has to be judged accordingly. And of course, restrictions and certain removals are all forms of punishment. But I think the most important part of the retribution process is they have to make amends seriously to the victims that they offended. And those victims have to forgive them. That's important because, yeah, just like we have the example of Gopal Chakravarti. When he offended Srivas Thakur, he was suffering from leprosy. And then when he was living on the banks of the Ganges, and when Lord Chaitanya passed the first time, he asked for forgiveness, and the Lord wouldn't give it to him. He said, you think you're suffering now, you're going to suffer in hell even worse. But then, after 3 months later, after continuing his suffering with leprosy, the Lord came by again. And this time, he was sincerely and seriously repentant. But the Lord said, I can't forgive you, only Srivas can. He sent him back to Srivas. And only when Srivas forgave him, then he was able to be rightly situated again. So that comes to the point that, yeah, you have to make some type of retribution to the persons you offend. You can't just say, well, I'm sorry, and so many things. No. You have to go to the persons you actually offend. I mean, and sincerely and seriously, not just from afraid of getting punishment, but sincerely. We have to be sorry for what we did to the person, knowing that we caused them some wrongdoings. Yeah, that has to be there. Okay, does that make sense? All right, well, almost done.
Chandramauli Maharaj ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. There are more programs Maharaj is giving in Pune. We will have an announcement. Prabhu will announce. Gulasham Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So tomorrow Maharaj will be giving Bhagavatam class in Kunji Bihari temple, and then day after tomorrow, that's on Sunday, again we'll have Maharaj's class here, and the later schedule will be putting up in NVCC. The later schedule you'll get on the WhatsApp groups as well as the poster will be put up on the notice board. Thank you. Hare Krishna.